So, welcome everyone to the Sports Whorl podcast for the daily fantasy and MLB. Where I'm Viraj Patel. He's Matt Dingler. So, Matt, how are you doing today?
Not bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. And I was looking back at our. So, before we begin our roster construction for today, I was looking back at our roster from last Friday, which is we didn't play on the weekends, and generally that's the way it's going to be. We're going to take the weekends off. But I got a chance to look at our roster from Friday, and it was about as bad as Rougned Odor punching Jose Bautista yesterday. Do you get the same assessment?
Yeah, we didn't do so great.
Yeah.
Carnes was fine. But the Giants were pretty disappointing, and that's really the reason we didn't do well at all.
Hmm.
I don't know what got into Shelby Miller, but he learned how to pitch again, I guess. Other than Panic,
Yeah.
Panic accounted for all three of their runs. So
Yeah, and I remember I remember me saying, "Hey Matt, what's the chance that Shelby Miller all of a
yeah,
sudden figures things out?" And I should have been more aware of what I was saying because that's exactly what he did, and we had nothing to counteract that because we rostered all the Giants. But Joe Panic had a good night, as you just said, and what can we learn from the guy that had the winning roster here at 246 points? Because what I immediately stands out to me is the ownership numbers, right? Like he ownered lots of low percentage owned guys. Like even Mike Trout for 4,500, he was only owned by 2% of the people, and Bryce Harper was owned by 29% of the people. And while Bryce did score more than Trout did, in a way, because of all the other low ownership players he actually, and they all went off, by the way, because that might not always happen, but
yeah,
this was one of those rosters and lineups that all went off. So, Matt, what's something that we can learn from that roster?
luck happens. Basically,
Yeah.
if you look at his roster, if you go through each individual pick, there's only really two or three that are actually that make any sense at all.
Mhm.
Uh, like for instance, take Marcus Simeon. Marcus Simeon is a shortstop hitting ninth for the Oakland A's,
Mhm.
who are not a good offensive team. He's not a good hitter. I don't know why anyone would take him other than trying to find exposure to cheap people who aren't going to be highly owned. Same with Chase Headley. I don't know if you know this stat, but at this point, Chase Headley didn't have an extra base hit for the entire season until he hit that home run.
Right. Yeah.
And he's a day in, day out player most of the time.
Yeah.
Giovatella can't hit at all. I don't know. He hits ninth as well.
Mhm.
These are pretty random picks. Other than Chris Sale, the ones I like Yan Gomes a lot actually.
Mhm.
He had been slumping. He was in a good spot against a bad pitcher, and I like Mike Trout because Trout is always a good play, and he seems to be less owned this season for some reason.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the interesting things also is he rostered Chase Headley, who actually has the lowest slugging percentage in MLB right now. And I don't know about it after he hit the home run because that probably helped him out. But he had a low batting average and he wasn't slugging. So this was just a random pick that went off. And Semien, I can kind of see why he would do that. The cost is also really helpful because if you have sale for 12K, then you kind of need guys at the bottom of the spectrum to kind of help you out. So Semien filled that requirement, and Semien hits a lot of home runs as well. So I think Semien has like 8 home runs already, but he strikes out a lot. So
To prove further that this guy did not really have a thought process behind his lineup, he had Chris Sale as his pitcher and Chase Headley as his third baseman, who was facing Chris Sale. You never ever want to do that because it just limits the max points you can get because he
right,
took points away from Sale by having a home run, and Sale is a top tier pitcher, and it's just not a beneficial strategy.
true. Yeah, you don't want to stack against somebody on your team. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, moving on to the actual roster that we're gonna try to build today. So I believe it's an 8 game slate with the majority of games starting at 7 p.m. as normal, and the roster or the contest will lock at 7:05. So 7:05 Eastern time, and there's gonna be a couple of West Coast games as well. As for the weather, there isn't really much to be concerned about. I mean, almost every game is clear. Tampa, Toronto has few chances of rain, but that's in a retractable roof, which I'm sure Rogers Center will be covered before the game starts. And the one that we're kind of going to be staying away from is Boston, Kansas City, because that one has pretty 60-70% chance of rain the whole night. So while that might be a really good game in theory, I don't think we're going to be able to see it today. So, Matt, what are your pitchers that you're going to be looking at today?
There's a couple that I really like. Jordan Zimmerman jumps off the page as kind of the top option.
Hmm.
He's been pitching well. He's not a high strikeout pitcher. I think he has like a 6K per nine, which is not amazing and not terrible. But he limits runs. He's pretty safe. And the Twins are a bad team against right-handed pitching in general.
Hmm.
So he's kind of a good safe option
Okay.
overall. What about you?
Yeah, so the guy I was really looking at is Kenta Maeda, and I do like Zimmerman. He is only $10,000, so that isn't like a Chris Sale. Like, we get a little bit more flexibility with our money if we do have Zimmerman over Maeda, but I do like Maeda because the Angels as a team really aren't that good. And Maeda's opposition pitcher is Shoemaker, who the Dodgers should be able to exploit. I think Adrian Gonzalez and Chase Utley and Corey Seager and all those other lefties in the Dodger lineup, they could have a huge night with Shoemaker on the mound. And, the sky high ERA means lots of runs given up as well on his end. So, just in terms of probability, I think Shoemaker allows a lot of runs tonight, and Maeda, even if he allows like 3 or 4 runs, he still gets the win, and that's 12 extra points. And on top of that, Maeda has almost, innings pitched equals strikeouts kind of thing going. So he's a tad bit shy of that pace, but he does have 38 strikeouts in 7 starts, which is fairly impressive. And he has been on a little bit of a cold streak, but that's because the opposition he's faced has kind of been pretty tough. Like Miami punishes righties and lefties because of Stanton and Yelich and Prado and all those guys. And then Toronto came in and Mets as well are pretty tough to get past. And the Mets one was weird because it was Syndergaard doing all the damage and not, Cespedes and David Wright. But he's been on a tough cold streak for a pitcher of his stature. But I think he is able to figure things out against LA again and potentially put up a 50-plus point night the way he did a couple of times back in April. Is there a third option that you're looking at, Matt?
Yeah, I'll say that. I'll kind of give a rank to them. Zimmerman is my favorite cash pitcher for 50-50s.
Hmm.
Maeda is, as you said, probably my favorite GPP pitcher. And then my second kind of deeper GPP, as they say, pitcher would be Jose Barrios.
Hmm.
He's a very, very high strikeout pitcher. He averages upwards of, look at his strikeouts, 19 strikeouts in 14 innings pitched so far. It's a small sample size, but it shows his upside. Tigers aren't incredible against right-handed pitching. They're a good offense. They've scored a lot of runs, but they strike out at a high rate, which is why this is a risky but potentially high upside pick. So if you really want to be risky a pitcher, maybe this is no more than one lineup, but maybe throw a lineup with Barrios at pitcher out there because it really lets you load up on any bats you want.
So how about we go the way our friend over here who had 250 points that day, he picked Sale and went the safe route. How about we go the weird route with the pitcher and just add Barrios? Because I do like this because not so long ago, the Detroit Tigers were struck out 20 times by Max Scherzer, who is, on his day, one of the best strikeout pitchers we have. And Barrios seems to be on that same kind of footing in terms of strikeouts. So, he could strike people out tonight, and I do like him. So why don't we go ahead and add him? Do you have any objections to that?
No, but for anyone listening, I will say this is a risky pick.
Right.
This is not something we are expecting either very high returns or very low returns from this pick.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just trying to make the $3 on $1 cash from this. This is either hopefully he goes off for 50 points, he's low owned, and you win a lot of money, or he gets shelled by the Tigers and he puts up a -10. If that, those are more likely than he puts up 25 or 30 point scenario. So we're okay with that in this scenario.
Yeah,
but it's only $1. You got to take your chances somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, we like to remind people that this is the 10K Monday MLB Bunch single entry, so we are going to be competing against folks that are only able to use one lineup here and not multiple ones. So we are in an advantage because of that, because if Barrios is low owned and he goes off, and because of his low cost, he's actually the lowest cost pitcher on the, no, there's a couple lower ones, but he is relatively low cost, and so we can add up on the bats that may or may not go off as well. So this is a risky lineup, but it is a $1 GPP entry, and
Yep.
we don't want to make $3. We're okay with making zero today if the payoff is we make $400, right? So that's the math we're doing today. So
Yep.
hopefully the rest of the roster will be a little bit more stable. With catcher, one guy that was on my mind was Victor Martinez before we rostered Barrios. So now Martinez is out, but I do like what Brian McCann has to offer. He is going to be in Arizona. Robbie Ray is on the mound. McCann traditionally has troubles with lefties, so that's something that makes me say no to him. But another guy that was on my mind was Wellington Castillo, who's going to go up against somebody named Green on the Yankees. I don't even know who that is. Do you know, Matt?
Yeah. So Green is. I actually read up on him a little bit last night. He's only 3,000 on FanDuel as a starting pitcher, which intrigued me
What?
a little bit. But there's actually really no reason to play him because he's never made a major league appearance.
Mhm.
He's a bullpen guy in the minors, so he's not even a starter. He'll be coming up from the minors today to make a spot start because CC Sabathia is hurt, and now Severino is also hurt.
Mhm.
So they need a spot start from him. He probably won't pitch more than 80 pitches, if I'm guessing, and he's never thrown in a major league environment. So I'm expecting runs on runs for Arizona tonight. So I like Castillo.
So do you like us potentially stacking Arizona? So
I do.
have Goldschmidt and Castillo and all those
Goldschmidt
power
was my
hitters.
favorite.
Yeah, same. I was gonna say at first base, just lock in Goldschmidt no
Yeah.
matter who we get at
He's only
pitcher.
3,800. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. So let's just roster Castillo to begin with. But who are other options for folks that don't want to stack the Diamondbacks?
If you're trying to save a catcher, a guy I like is Tyler Flowers. He's never going to be an incredible power hitter,
Mhm.
but he's been known to hit. He hits lefties very well, and John Neese is a terrible pitcher. He gets actually hit by righties very hard. He's had a rough season so far. So anytime you can get a 2,200 catcher, even though he's on the Braves are bad, I know, but they actually have the potential to score some runs tonight against Neese. So he's cheap. He's been in a slump lately, and this is a good spot in a tournament to break out of that.
Mhm. One guy that I would have said is Giovanni Soto, but he is going up against Kenta Maeda. Like, Soto hasn't been too bad. He did have good outings with the Cubs back in the day, and he has shown a couple of power as well. But recently he's been a little bit on the side of not doing too well, so we're gonna just not roster him. But at 2,600 against a favorable pitching opposition, I do like rostering Soto from time to time. But the guy that I would actually suggest is Stephen Vogt, who is going to be going up against Derek Holland. This is a lefty-lefty matchup, but Vogt has been on a little bit of a cold streak, and there is potential that Derek Holland just kind of combusts on his own, and the Rangers go into the bullpen, and the bullpen isn't able to hold off for Stephen Vogt. So that's a super risky pick at 2,400, but you're kind of betting on the fact that he does a little bit of damage to Holland, but then Holland gets kicked out of the game by the third or fourth inning because the ace just go off thanks to Josh Reddick and Semien and Chris Davis. So you're betting on more so that Vogt faces more of the bullpen than he does Holland. And if that does happen, you can save a lot of money at catcher and still have a pick that goes off. How does Saltalamacchia look to you? If we didn't have Barrios, would you feel good about rostering Saltalamacchia, Matt?
Not bad, actually. He's a better hitter as a lefty. Barrios has been giving up some runs, so he doesn't hit high in the order, but he's got the power you look for in a catcher because catcher's so unpredictable that you basically want a guy that's cheap with power, unless it's Buster Posey.
Right, yeah.
And it's a good spot for him, actually, if we didn't roster Barrios.
Yeah. So let's move on to first base, where our automatic pick is already Paul Goldschmidt. We don't even have to think about anybody else. But just to be on the safe side, who would you have rostered if Goldschmidt wasn't available?
I barely looked past Goldschmidt. Two of the other guys, I would say, I like Adrian Gonzalez. He's still too cheap. Facing Schumacher's not a great pitcher anymore. He used to be pretty good, but he's cheap. He's got power. And the other one, Prince Fielder, again. I hate to keep recommending him because he's been so bad. But for 2,600, getting a guy who hit 347 against right-handed pitching as an average last year, it's pretty.
Yeah, Yeah, it's going to be pretty tough to roster Prince Fielder given just the output that's been stagnating over time. But Manea did get kicked out by the Red Sox like pretty early on, I think, in the fourth or fifth inning when he pitched in Boston, and Travis Shaw was able to do a lot of damage to him. So I think Fielder might do some of the same as well.
Completely forgot Maneo was lefty. I really thought he was righty.
Oh yeah.
I guess I don't know much about him, but still, same thing you said about Vogt could apply here. I guess I wouldn't recommend Fielder, but if you're really looking to find someone cheap, then fine.
Okay. So how about Jung Ho Park, which is he's on the Twins. He did have like a 40-point night the other day, I think. Yeah, a 40-point night where he had 2 home runs. He is in Detroit, which is a hitter's ballpark. So if in a universe where we didn't roster Paul Goldschmidt, would this guy even like be in your top 5 in terms of consideration?
No, Zimmerman just doesn't give up enough contact to make him worth rostering in my eyes. I would go someone more like Mark Teixeira, because Teixeira's in a hitter's park facing a lefty. He hits well righty. He's been in a slump, which I like targeting guys in slumps because they're cheap and they are still the same hitter. And he's still Mark Teixeira. He's a great hitter.
Right.
And Robbie Ray is not a great pitcher.
Robbie Ray is usually the guy we target for the most part.
Yeah.
So, but with second base, I know you're gonna have your list of guys like Rougned Odor might be cracking that list. No, okay. Are you sure? He might deck us just like he decked Batista. So, but if Odor isn't on your lineup, who do you want?
I'll give you my probably number one. I like Starlin Castro a lot. Assuming he bats second.
Okay.
Well, a lot of the time against lefties recently, he's been in the 2-hole for the Yankees. He's pretty cheap. He's a good hitter. Really good against lefties. And if he hits there, he's my favorite option.
Yeah,
but
I had him. Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think?
Oh no, go ahead. I was just gonna say. Yeah, I was just gonna say I had him against Kansas City that day. He had a home run, and I think the pitcher was a lefty. I might be wrong, but yeah, it's not a bad place if he's in the 2-hole to start Castro. But yeah, what were you saying?
What are your premier options?
Yeah, so a guy that I think you didn't maybe consider, and I'm not seeing him, so I'm gonna search for his name just to make sure. Jungho Kang is a third baseman, so I thought he was a second baseman. Yeah, but he's not a second baseman. But when we get the third base, that's a guy that I was gonna, think about. But for second base, the guy that I was really thinking about was Pedroia at Kansas City, but that's not gonna happen. The game is gonna pretty much the game's gonna get rained out. So somebody that I would maybe think about rostering is Utley because he can get on base. He has a high on base percentage this year, even though the hitting hasn't always been up to par. But Dodger Stadium is like a fortress. He did have a home run a couple nights ago against the Mets, but Utley is on the waning stages of his career. He's not the 38 home run kind of guy he was with the Phillies. So I don't, 3,200 is a lot to pay for him, but he does end up in the top of the batting order more so than not. So just like Castro, I think he's worth a look. But somebody that I thought was a decent pick was Dozier. He's weird because he does hit decently against lefties, but overall this year he's only had a 218 batting average, and 27 hits through middle of May isn't all that impressive to me. But given that, I don't think he's a bad choice to have. Like against Houston, he absolutely went off, and he is going to be in Detroit tonight, so that is more of a hitter's ballpark as well than Minnesota's would be. So Dozier is somebody that I'm maybe thinking about, but what do you think Josh Harrison can bring to the table today against Perez?
It depends on if he starts or not. He's not an everyday player necessarily with Kung back, but he's okay. He doesn't hit righties well at all. He's a great lefty hitter.
Yeah.
I guess my favorite second baseman is Derek Dietrich. He's gonna lead off against a righty. Eichhoff is a terrible pitcher, as we talked about earlier before the podcast, I guess. But he hits righties so well. He hits for a lot of power, actually. He's been hitting the ball relatively well overall. So he Utley, or Castro, if he bats second, are my 3 favorites.
So let's just take Utley out of the process of elimination. So then we're left with Castro or Dietrich. Who do you want from those two? Coin flip.
This one's hard because I like Castro the best, but
Yeah.
he won't necessarily be hitting second.
Hmm.
Um,
Let's go
Dietrich's
with
safer.
let's go with
He's,
Dietrich.
yeah.
Okay. Although 3,300, I am a little too hesitant to pull the trigger on a guy with 3,300 when Castro's $400 cheaper.
Yeah.
So
But that's the worry.
yeah, but at the end
Well,
of the
we can
day,
come back if we need 400 extra.
right? Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. At the end of the day, if there is a need, we can come back. So at third base, I think my choice was pretty clear, Josh Donaldson, because he's going up against Drew Smiley, who is a lefty. Donaldson's a righty. Donaldson still hasn't broken out of his slump. He did have the decent outing against San Fran, but that was like 7 days ago. Texas, that was just basically he did nothing over there. I mean, he had a walk and that turned into a run. But aside from that, the power was completely gone for some reason in the American League's best hitters ballpark. He is going to be at Tampa. He is going to be back home in Toronto, so that's a park where he does do well at. So for 3,900, that is a pretty low cost option. But somebody that was also on my radar was Evan Longoria, who's going to be against J.A. Happ, who I have no idea how he has a 2.05 ERA up to this point because Happ used to pitch for the Phillies and he was literally like the fifth guy on every rotation. But to round this off, and a guy that I'm not really looking at, but maybe if we didn't have Barrios, I would have rostered Nick Castellanos. He's just on a tear right now, 344 batting average, 7 home runs. So he's hitting for power and contact, and he tends to get on base for the most part. So not a bad look if Castellanos, you can roster him, and if Barrios isn't your pitcher. But who are your choices?
Well, the top two I think are pretty clear. Donaldson and Longoria are both premier options. I think Longoria is someone who's going to go under-owned because of Donaldson,
Mm-hmm.
and Longoria is just as capable of hitting a lefty as Donaldson. But I prefer Donaldson since we have the money.
Yeah.
But a cheap guy that I love. I actually didn't realize that he had an incredible game last night until I had already locked him in for my lineups today. Was Danny Valencia?
Oh.
He hit 3 home runs last night actually, and
Wow.
he's a lefty killer. He hits cleanup for the A's against lefties, and he's in a great spot. He's very cheap. Again, he's just coming back from injury is the reason he's so cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But if we needed to spin down because of a pitcher at third base, we would pick him. But I think we might as well take Donaldson because he has higher upside. Valencia is going to be highly owned after last night.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Do you at all feel like we need to start rostering more Diamondbacks, or do you want to wait until the outfield or shortstop?
not lefties,
Okay.
just righties.
Okay, so then
Well,
let's.
I don't know. Green is pretty bad. He had a better righties hit him better in the minors, but that doesn't mean a lot.
Mhm.
So Lamb would be a pretty interesting choice because he normally bats second.
Right. And before Goldschmidt, who tends to clear the table. So if Goldschmidt does have a big night and, Lamb is always on base before him, then
Yeah.
Lamb could pick up those easy points out of the stack. But we do have the money to spend. If the need comes to it, we will drop down to Lamb, or there's an option at second base for us as well. So let's just use Donaldson and come back if we need to. For
Okay.
shortstop, are you looking at Gene Segura as well, or no?
Yeah, I am. He's not a great righty hitter. Where is he?
Oh, is he not playing shortstop?
He should be. He might be. He's probably at the top. He's pretty expensive.
Oh, there he is,
Yeah.
3,500.
Oh, he's Wait, he got moved to second base now. Interesting.
Oh.
He's been a shortstop for days now.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
so who are the other options then? Tulo?
Tulo's a good option. He
Yeah.
was the one I was looking at last night. Let's see what else I had.
I thought Freddie Galvis could have a decent night. Alcides Escobar, I had him yesterday, and he had like a 30-point night. Yeah, and he stole a base and he had 4 hits, but that is like an aberration of a game for him.
Yeah.
Though he was an all-star last year with like a plus.
He's a great player.
Right, he's a great player and he steals bases, but he has to get on base for that to happen.
Yeah.
So.
I don't
But
know.
are you thinking
Segura,
about
I'm just kind
rostering?
of assuming Segura,
Mhm.
but I would say Tulo's a good option.
Yeah. What about
Escobar's
Marcus
not a bad
Semien
option. He hits 9th. There's no reason to.
against
play.
Derek Holland?
He's gonna get 3 at bats, maybe 4. It's just
True. And he's at Oakland, so Oakland is usually not a park you want to target for power hitters
Yeah.
generally. So because a lot of their fly balls for power hitters tend to be outs in Oakland. Any
Yeah.
guy at the bottom of the list that you're looking at?
Um,
No. I don't blame you if you say no. There's really not good options. Jordy Mercer is a guy that's been declining in terms of price the whole time, but he doesn't hit a lot of home runs either, so there's literally no reason to have him. But if he was at Coors Field or something, I would say, yeah,
only
go
against
for
the
it.
lefty.
Yeah,
He leads off against lefties.
yeah.
Um, Seager, I mean, he hit 2 home runs last night, but
hmm
he's pretty expensive to pay for a shortstop.
Yeah,
He's been great, but it's kind of funny. One of my high school friends actually knows him.
really? Nice.
Yep. I think
Is he?
Seager went to state.
Oh, okay. So they're all from this area, right? Like the Seagers, like Kyle Seager, Corey Seager,
Yeah,
all of them are
they're
from.
from Raleigh.
Okay.
I think they might have both gone to NC State.
hmm So
But
do we go with Tulo or Seager?
who do you? Are your outfielders expensive?
No, not really. Because, again, I assume that we always pick the higher pitcher, like the cost wise. So I always go for lower tier options for outfield. So,
You're gonna plug in Seager then? I just don't know. Or Tulo. I don't know. What's your opinion?
so my thing is he's gonna go. Tulo is gonna go up against Drew Smiley, which is never a bad thing. But Smiley does strike people out, and Tulo can like extend an at bat. But what he's been lacking recently is like he'll ward off like 8 pitches, but the ninth one he'll actually strike out on rather than hit a home
Yeah.
run. He like Tulo's not the guy anymore. Where like Matt Carpenter, who I'm doing an article on, he's one of those guys that after the 15th pitch that he fouls off, the 16th one he's actually more likely to hit a home run or just hit the ball and get a hit. Whereas Tulo's one of those guys. The longer the at bat goes, he's still as adept at fouling things off, but he's more and more likely to strike out. And I
Sure.
think with a guy like Carpenter, as long as the at bat is like 10 plus pitches, he's actually more and more likely to hit a home run or hit a out or a triple or something. So that's the reason why if Smiley is going to be striking a ton of people out, and he does have a high strikeout rate as well, then I don't really like Tulo in this slot. Whereas I would much rather have Seager, who's going to go up against a guy like Matt Shoemaker, who's a righty, so the lefty righty thing matches up. And I think Seager could just have a field day, but that's
Yep.
very dependent. Like he could be cooling off at some point, and I don't know if
Yeah.
the 28 and 37 point nights are repeatable. But let's lock in Seager and then come back if we need to, because 3,500 for the outfield per player is still pretty.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's enough. So while I looked at the bats that were cost effective at the outfield level, who are some of your top choices for outfield?
Let me think. I think probably my favorite outfield choice of the day is Chris Davis, uh, righty outfielder for the A's,
hmm
facing I think Drew Holland is, I think that's right.
Derek Holland? Yeah.
Derek Holland, not Drew Holland. Drew Smiley.
Yeah,
But,
Drew Smiley, Holland.
Derek Holland, he's a lefty. He's not great,
hmm
and Davis has mashed pretty much everything over the last month, but he mashes lefties very much,
hmm
and he's a major home run threat. He's hitting in the heart of an order of a lineup I expect to score a lot of runs today.
Yeah.
So I think I love that pick.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, for me, the guy that I was looking at really is going to be at the top of the order, and that was going to be Andrew McCutchen, because against a Braves pitcher, any Braves pitcher, I think McCutchen could have a multiple home run night the way he did against the Rockies at Coors Field. And he's been on a tear recently. He had one bad outing yesterday against the Cubs, but he in general hit well against the Cubs pitchers, which is tough to do. So I do like McCutchen's chances of maybe having a huge night tonight against the Braves.
I really like McCutchen.
Yeah, in terms of just targeting Drew Smiley, do you like Jose Bautista?
Smiley's a pretty good pitcher.
Right.
I think we're not giving him enough credit here. I was taking Donaldson because Donaldson is Donaldson against
Right.
lefties.
Yeah.
But Batista's pretty equal against righties and lefties. I don't think we have to actively target him. I think Batista would be an interesting option,
hmm
but I don't think he's a must play. I think McCutchen is borderline must play.
Right. So because McCutchen costs a lot, how about we go for a guy like Starling Marte who has a higher batting average than McCutchen does, but lower amounts of power? Is that even like a thing that we need to do?
Cash games, no need to in tournaments.
hmm
You wanna target as much power as possible in a tournament. I say we block in McCutchen.
Okay. So that means we have to look at 3,000 or cheaper, which isn't going to be a problem, I think. But a guy that was standing out to me was Mazzara. He's going to be facing Oakland and Manea. Lefty lefty, Mazzara, because of the high batting average, he has hit well against both sides this year. The power could be something that's suspect, like he could go off, but he might not go off as well. So, not a guy that I do really want to roster, but somebody that I was just looking at. Somebody else was Brett Gardner, who can get on base and will steal bases, and he's against Robbie Ray, who I think lefty or righty, Robbie Ray has trouble in general. So Brett Gardner was somebody with the stolen base potential I was looking at. And he has power potential as well. Like, did you know this? Brett Gardner, since like 2011 or 2009, is in the top 25 in like WAR amongst all batters.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the power is there for him. It's just, you don't see it all the time, but he is in Arizona. He can hit for doubles and triples and stuff as well. So,
Yep.
not a bad choice to have. Another guy was
Can
Josh
I-
Reddick but Josh Reddick is,
These are all lefties.
I know. So why don't you introduce some guy that's not a lefty?
Yeah, Brandon Drury. Back to our Diamondbacks
Mhm.
stack. He's 2,500. He's probably gonna bat second, or maybe in the at least top five,
hmm
probably third. And if we can target anyone against Chad Green, I think we should do it.
Okay.
He's actually a better power hitter than those stats show.
hmm
Those recent stats. He's only 2,500. That's a pretty nice spot to be in.
Right. And somebody decent to fill up our Diamondback stack as well.
Yes.
So
And
that,
also,
yeah, go ahead.
it also allows us to get Chris Davis, but who I think is a good option. But we can look at other guys in that.
Chris Davis is 3,400. Okay. So, I mean, Desmond I don't like. Ozuna is just pretty much a contact hitter by this point.
Yeah.
Cole Calhoun against Maeda, I don't think so. Polanco was a dark horse, but he's decently not performing recently.
That's another one though. That's a pretty good option. I mean, Williams Perez is a terrible pitcher,
hmm
and he'll probably be batting third.
Right. Before
Either-
McCutchen or after McCutchen?
McCutchen, I don't remember actually. I would think. Well, it's been whoever leads off, then McCutchen, Polanco, and then Starling Marte.
Right. Marte's
So-
usually cleanup, right? So why did they bat McCutchen second? Do you know?
Because he's such a good average generally, and he
Okay.
gets on base.
Oh,
But-
right. He gets on base so that there's somebody on base
People
for
to
Marte
drive
to
in,
drive
yeah.
in. Yeah. Okay. So, any other options that you're looking at? I know JD Martinez would have been not a good
A
option,
good option.
but Lorenzo Cain rained out. Not going to be good. Miguel Sano against Zimmerman, I don't like. Righty as well, not too good.
Yeah.
Yasmani Tomas, maybe.
Interesting. I haven't been impressed by him this season. I keep trying to roster him. He just hasn't really impressed me overall. I
Mhm.
watched a few Diamondbacks games. He seems to be swinging at pitches. Again, this incredibly small sample size, but he
Mhm.
struck out a couple times when he just reached on a couple pitches. But
Yeah, like the O swing percentage would be really high for him, right? That's
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yeah.
Outside the zone swings. Yeah. So you said Chris Davis. I don't have a problem with Chris Davis. I think the batting average is a little bit suspect, but that means he might not get on base. But if that means he hits for 8 home runs, I'm totally fine with that. So let's slot in Chris Davis, which leaves us with $200. So what I've been usually asking you is, Matt, are you happy with this lineup and can we do save changes? But what I'm going to ask you now is, where do we go wrong? Because it's important once you build a lineup that you sort of criticize it on your own and kind of do like a best case or worst case analysis on what's going on. So one area of improvement for us would be maybe pitcher because Barrios is really, really risky,
Yep.
but he is allowing us to get all these really nice bats into our order. He did allow us to do a really nice Diamondback stack, and everyone else is going to just go off as well, hopefully, maybe, who knows. But that is one thing. Pitcher is where we might make our money or not make any money. So I'm happy with that risk, but that is a criticism of this lineup going in.
Yeah. I did have one other question. Could you type in Segura?
Hmm.
Okay, that's what I thought. If we wanted to, we could change Dietrich out for Segura. But this is, again, whatever your preference is.
Let's
The
see.
only problem with this is that the Yankees bullpen is pretty solid and has been very solid this year.
Yeah.
So if Green gets knocked out, we might not want to have like our entire team exposed to the Yankees bullpen.
Hmm. Let's see. What's Segura's deal? 331 batting average, 5 stolen bases, 5 home runs. Those numbers look solid from the last 10.
Yeah.
Why is Segura's numbers making the case that we shouldn't go with Dietrich?
He's solid. He's actually a better power hitter than almost any other shortstop,
Hmm.
except Story apparently,
Yeah.
but and Lindor. But yeah, either way, honestly, it's fine with me.
Huh.
Take your pick.
Let's go with Segura. Is that cool?
All right. Yep.
Because that means basically Wellington Castillo is the 5th hitter in that lineup. And so Segura and Drury should be above Goldschmidt. And if Goldschmidt gets on base, then Castillo just has to hit a grand slam. So we're in business. Whereas with
In
Dietrich,
theory.
Jared Eichhoff could tap into Jared Eichhoff of April potential, and we might just get screwed up over there. Whereas, but also the Segura, like Chapman comes out at last in the lineup, but that's if the Yankees are ahead, right? Like if the Yankees are not ahead, then you won't see
Yeah.
Chapman at least. And if you don't see Chapman, then that's 2 out of the 3 that you won't see, and that I can live with. It's only when we see, if it's a close game, like 10-9 going into the 9th, then I'd be worried. But if it's
But at that point, they've scored 10 runs.
right, that's what I was getting. If it's 10-9, then even then I'm not worried. So I think the D-back stack is something that we both wanted to have before this podcast, and now that we've had it, I think with pitcher Jose Barrios, hopefully he does well, but we don't know for sure. But I think this is a decent lineup, so I'm going to go ahead and save it. And like we always say, if there is any weather issues that we can't foresee at 1 p.m. today, they might change by 7, so we might go in and change the roster again. But if that doesn't happen, just assume that this is our exact roster and we won't be changing any guys. So, yeah. Matt, are you happy with this?
I'm happy.
All right, cool. So I'll go ahead and end this then.